Joining me now, Texas Congressman Mike McCaul. He, of course, is ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Ed. Thanks for having me.
I want to get to the meat and the substance of the bill, but when Nancy Pelosi frames that as the speaker, that this was all about the Democrats going for workers, how does she explain the fact that the bill includes $13 million for Howard University, $25 million for the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, a wonderful institution, but I'm not sure what it has to do with the coronavirus, and $75 million for the National Endowment for the Humanities? How can she frame it that way when the reality looks a little different?
Well, the reality is we stripped most of her little pet projects out of this bill in the Senate. I think a couple remained in there, but have nothing to do with coronavirus or stopping the threat of coronavirus. So for her to claim victory in the Senate, I think is not accurate. I think the Senate did take most of that stuff that was unrelated out. You saw the Senate passed it. It's coming to the House on Friday. We will have a debate on it, and we fully expect to have this passed by a voice vote and go to the president's desk on Friday, where he will sign it into law.
So here's the most important question maybe for our viewers. They hear $2 trillion, big number. Obviously, there are a lot of industries that are going to be helped. They need it right now, but it's the workers who need it most. How quickly do you think you can get checks out? Forget about the $2 trillion. People are wondering about the $1,200, the $2,400 for a family. And we're hearing reports this could take weeks. It could get complicated and bureaucratic. Are you worried? How quickly can people get the money?
I was told 2 to 3 weeks. And, the bipartisan agreement is the working man needs help right now. And that's what that direct check assistance is designed to do. But we think within a matter of weeks, people will have the $1,200 for children, $500. But I think, Ed, the most important provision, in my judgment, is the small business loans that involves both the loans and the tax provisions that can help small businesses stay afloat with cash flow and liquidity so they don't lay off all these workers. We're trying to get through really the next, some say 15 days, I say 2 months, really, of a crisis. Where we can keep them afloat so they don't go under, so that when we do rebound out of this crisis, these companies will still be in existence and the jobs will still be there and people will not be out on the streets. We also have pandemic unemployment assistance for those who do not qualify under that provision. And so we want to make the working man whole. Right now, we want to keep the jobs intact. We want to keep the small businesses afloat until we get through this.
There's a lot of numbers flying around. We just put one on the screen, 3.3 million unemployment claims in the last week. That is coast to coast. That's in your state of Texas. That's here in New York, all around this country. And so it's important to get economic relief, as you say. It's also important to help the people on the front lines. And Sandra just noted this with Dr. Oz. I want to ask you as a policymaker, this is the front page of the New York Post. It says, treated like trash. These are nurses, doctors on the front lines. These are in particular Mount Sinai nurses wearing garbage bags because they don't have gowns. They don't have the medical supplies they need. I'm not pointing fingers. We don't know who's to blame. Everybody says they're trying, whether it's the governor, it's the mayor, it's the president, it's you, Congressman McCaul. But how could we have nurses on the front lines right now wearing trash bags?
It's unacceptable. We have 100 to 150 billion in this bill to provide for that. The PPE, or personal protective equipment, has been a big issue, along with the test kits to get these things out. The frontline people need it first. You know what happened in Italy is very insightful, Ed, and that is this coronavirus impacted the healthcare provider and the doctors and nurses on the front lines, and their infrastructure collapsed because they weren't able to, not only hospital beds, but when your frontline workers cannot protect themselves and they come down, then we got a real problem. So I think that's one of the biggest priorities, and it is in this bill that we're going to pass on Friday.
Got it. In the last 30 seconds we have, again, putting aside politics, you've got the Democratic governor here in New York, Andrew Cuomo, yesterday saying amid the crisis, and there are crises in these hospitals here in New York City right now that they're trying to deal with. But he said there is some optimism that social distancing here in New York is working. We heard the same from the president's side of this in his task force last night. Are you hearing that as well in Congress, that some of these measures we've taken, it's still a desperate, difficult situation, but that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, that some of these measures are starting to work?
You know, I know it's hard, but the social distancing, I think, is working. We've got to flatten the curve more in the short term. The more we do it, the more it's going to flatten. And lastly, the therapeutics coming out are very promising. The antivirals that I've seen, some of the FDA clinical trials, and then the vaccine itself, I think, provide a lot of hope. If we have a Tamiflu, like when you have the flu, to calm people down. And I think in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see some major announcements with antivirals being tested right now in humans that will really make a difference moving forward in this pandemic.
A lot of optimism there amid a storm that's happening right now. No doubt about it. Congressman McCaul, we appreciate you coming in and covering all that ground. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.